Unless you're a pilot, maybe sit down and stop pretending to be one. The words cut through the cabin like a blade. Captain Ray Whitman didn't even look Danielle Morris in the eye as he shoved her carry-on into the overhead bin. Danielle had only asked about a strange whirring sound from the engine, calmly, precisely, but her question was met with arrogance and dismissal. A few passengers chuckled. One woman 2 rows back smirked and muttered, "Always making something out of nothing." Danielle sat down slowly, brushing her blazer, her face unreadable. But her eyes? Focused, unshaken. She glanced out the window toward the engine and then down to her notes. She wasn't here just to fly, and she hadn't stopped being a federal inspector simply because she wasn't in uniform. But for now, she stayed silent, observing. What the captain didn't know was she was already writing his report. The flight took off smoothly, but Danielle could feel the shift in air, both in altitude and in attitude. As beverage service rolled by, she noticed the same passenger who had mocked her now whispering to the person next to him, throwing glances her way. The flight attendant, Naomi Lynn, offered her water with a small, apologetic smile. "You okay?" she whispered. Danielle nodded politely but said nothing. The whirring sound had disappeared, but now something else felt off. Captain Whitman's voice crackled over the intercom. His tone was smug, laced with passive aggression. "We'll try to keep the turbulence light, folks, unless someone back there wants to run the flight themselves." A few snickers followed. Danielle took a deep breath, fingers resting lightly on the flap of her briefcase. Inside was something far more powerful than anger, her FAA credentials. But this wasn't the time, not yet. She watched. She waited. Because sometimes the most powerful statement is silence. 30 minutes into the flight, turbulence hit harder than expected. The seatbelt sign dinged and trays rattled. But what made Danielle sit upright wasn't the shaking, it was the announcement. Captain Whitman had just authorized the crew to begin walking the aisles again, despite being at unsafe altitude and wind conditions. Danielle's brow furrowed. That was a clear protocol violation. She waited until Naomi passed by again and calmly asked, "Could I speak with the captain when he's free?" Naomi hesitated, eyes narrowing. "May I ask why?" Danielle opened her briefcase and flipped it around, revealing a polished FAA badge. Naomi's eyes widened. "You're—" Danielle nodded. Moments later, the captain appeared, still cocky. "What now?" he scoffed. Danielle stood, calm and composed, and held up her badge. "Federal Aviation Inspector Morris, we need to talk about your decisions today." And in that instant, the entire cabin fell silent. Captain Whitman froze mid-step. The color drained from his face, as whispers spread like wildfire through the cabin. The woman he mocked, the one he called paranoid, was now standing tall, badge in hand, voice unwavering. Naomi Lynn instinctively stepped back, realizing the weight of the moment. Passengers craned their necks, phones half raised, unsure if they were witnessing a confrontation or a reckoning. Danielle didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Your disregard for safety protocol during turbulence will be noted in full detail," she said, pen now in hand, calm as ever. Whitman tried to recover, stammering something about pilot discretion, but it was too late. The authority had shifted. Danielle's quiet presence now dominated the space where arrogance had once ruled. As she returned to her seat, Naomi offered her a respectful nod. And for the first time, no one dared look away. As the plane touched down at Reagan National Airport, the mood had shifted entirely. The same passengers who had laughed earlier now avoided Danielle's gaze. Some looked guilty, others ashamed. Captain Whitman exited the cockpit without a word, his swagger gone. Danielle rose slowly, adjusted her blazer, and retrieved her briefcase. As she walked down the aisle, Naomi Lynn stepped aside and softly said, "Thank you for how you handled it." Danielle offered a faint smile. Sometimes, presence speaks louder than protocol. Outside the gate, a man in a dark suit approached and nodded. FAA personnel. No fanfare, no announcement. Just duty. Danielle disappeared into the crowd, not as a victim, not as a spectacle, but as the quiet force that changed everything. They laughed when she asked a question, but they'll remember the silence that followed her answer.